In my 20s, I found work as a storage assistant in a nearby warehouse. It was situated at the outside of town, adjacent to nothing, on the side of a highway. We used to make fun of the site and the decision of the company's owners to erect the sizable warehouse in such a desolate, empty part of the town away from anything. Even though it was probably just inexpensive land with convenient access to the interstate, arriving into a huge empty parking lot in the middle of nowhere every evening always seemed a little strange. One of my coworkers, who I'll call Steven and keep his identity anonymous, and I always worked overnights. It was our responsibility to disassemble, arrange, and move each day's goods to the appropriate location in the warehouse for storage. After a couple of weeks, it becomes equally repetitive and simple work, which I perform most evenings while half asleep. There were days when Steven and I would be the only two evening workers. Tyler was on vacation at the time, so I was by myself at the warehouse every night from 11 p.m. until 5 a.m. It was a Wednesday night, and as soon as I pulled in, there was an abnormality.
In the farthest end of this enormous, deserted parking lot, a car was parked. Although it had no lights on and no one appeared to be nearby, being that far away on private land was quite strange. I parked close to the front door, entered, and then dialed the police to come have a look. Although it was on private land and was parked in the distant corner, I had a strange feeling that it wasn't just some kids or a broken down car from the highway. Police arrived at the front door 20 minutes later and informed me that the car was empty and showing no evidence of anyone nearby. They were very certain that it was also broken down, so we called a tow truck to make it take it away, and I later went back to work. Before I was stopped by a huge bang at the front of the building, I probably shifted a few goods for maybe an hour. I quickly walked and turned on the front lights while quickly approaching the door. Behind the glass stood a man who was glaring at me while banging his fist against the door and appeared to be terribly worn out. I approached and spoke through the glass. "Are you all right? Why are you here? This is personal property." The man gave me this disgusted look as he glanced at me. He yelled, beating on the door, "Where's my car?" He continued interrupting me and got furious as I tried to explain things, yelling for me to let him inside the building. I finally got him to stop talking by threatening to call the police on him. He turned around and gave me one last insane look before leaving. I couldn't stop wondering where that man may have been all this time as I returned to work. I assumed he may have gone to a gas station to purchase a canister for his vehicle, but there is no way he could have traveled both ways on foot. Additionally, if he had gotten a ride, he would have returned before the car was towed. I simply couldn't come up with a plausible location for the man to be. After only a few minutes of returning to work, the front door slammed once more. I was angry and terrified, but I did not expect to see the same police officers who had been here earlier when I looked through the glass. They claimed to have received a call from the towing business regarding certain worrying items that had apparently gone unnoticed before on the exterior of the trunk. When I informed them about the man who had stopped by seeking for his car, they questioned me about what I had seen. After they left, I had no further updates until later in the week, when the police returned with search dogs to check the area surrounding the warehouse.
They apparently discovered dried blood on the bumper's back, and when they obtained a search warrant, they apparently discovered more blood inside the trunk. They think the man might have emerged to bury a body in the woods next to the warehouse, but to my knowledge, they never discovered any compelling proof.
The individual, however, never came up to pick up his car from the towing business, and he also disappeared. He simply vanished. Knowing how near I was to a potential killer is quite unsettling, and for the last few years I've worked at the warehouse, I've found working alone at night to be really unsettling. The possibility that the man may return and try to hold me accountable for what I did would always be in the back of my mind, even though I knew it wasn't likely. One late night, I was working on DoorDash to get some additional cash for savings. Although it wasn't really busy, I was still picking up a few orders here and there to make it fair. A little after 1 a.m., a customer order that would take 30 minutes arrived. Although it was a long journey, I decided to accept it because of the generous reward. I drove to the restaurant, a fancy-looking local Korean eatery, and then I started walking toward the house. The route eventually led me into a somewhat undesirable area of town. I'd been here previously with no issues, but as I drove through and observed all the abandoned homes, I began to feel uneasy. I parked on the side of the road when I arrived at the address. It was a tiny, aged house with a broken-down driveway. I parked my car and started to make my way toward the porch. My phone rang just as I was about to place the bag down.
I quickly finished the delivery after hanging up when I didn't hear back, then ran back to my car.
I heard the front door of the house swing open as I turned on my car and belted up. When I turned around, I saw a woman sprinting at my car while yelling at me to wait while waving her arms in the air. I was unable to respond since it was so strange. She rushed up to my window and began pounding, pleading with me to assist her. Even though I was still unsure of what was happening, I opened the window and questioned her needs. She informed me that her 3-year-old daughter was inside having breathing difficulties and required my assistance. She began to go back up the driveway while pleading for my assistance.
I got out of my car and started to follow her while I was still in a trance from my shock.
But as I did, I saw that she became calmer and less agitated.
Now that the scenario was less hectic and unexpected, she began to reflect more and understood how bizarre this was.
I stopped on the driveway and asked, "Have you called 911 yet?" When she turned around, it appeared as though her tears and fear had dried up. She stated that there was no time and then clearly began to act panicked once more. Instead of a frightened mother, it appeared more like a drug addict going through a mental collapse. She started screaming again, and I sprinted back down the driveway to my car, where I even started attempting to open the passenger door while she kept screaming. She attempted to run in front of my car to get to my side as I restarted the engine and shifted into reverse. I put the car in drive and circled around her once I was clear. As I drove past the house again at that very moment, I noticed a sizable figure watching everything from an upstairs window. I called 911 as soon as I was outside the neighborhood and gave them the address and the emergency. When the police called me back, they informed me that the woman had a separate account and that she had merely come out to leave me a cash tip. They also observed that she was single and had no history of sharing a home with people or children. I was shocked by the scenario even more as a result of this, but after further discussion with the officer, it became obvious that nothing could be done. Both of our claims lacked supporting evidence, making any attempt to bring charges fruitless. Additionally, the officers appeared exhausted and unmotivated to deal with anything, but I knew he was true that I wasn't able to do anything about it, so that's how it was left. I had a gut feeling that she was attempting to pull me inside the house for sinister purposes, especially given the fact that she was childless. After learning everything, the most terrifying part was seeing that person inside the home observing us and realizing that he was ominously waiting for me to enter.